Hey there, so let's talk about ISO in photography. In the very recent video, we talked about aperture, and ISO is one of the three parameters on the basis of which affect your quality of your photography when you try to capture light through the camera lens. Um, Now, what we're going to see is we're going to do a live demo of how ISO changes the photography or the photograph that you've taken and why ISO is important. ISO primarily relates to the amount of light your camera lets in, and therefore it determines how light or dark your photos will be. So if you're in a very bright light environment, you don't want all the light to get into the camera, because the exposure of the lens to a very bright light may lead to a very bright photograph, and it may lose a lot of fine details of the photography. And conversely, if the light is very low outside, it's almost dark, right, or you're taking something in the night, you might want to capture as much as light possible. So in that moment, you would want your camera lens to behave in a way that lets more and more light in. So ISO determines that. Now what we're going to see is we're going to see a live demo, and this is Nikon D5500 I'm using here, and I'm putting it in aperture priority mode. You can see A is aligned with this, and as for this camera, there is a button using which I can switch to the ISO priority mode. So on the same aperture setting, I can use different ISO, and that's what we're going to do here, right? If you pay attention, there is a yellow figure here. So if I just move the figure number without pressing this, it will change the aperture. If I press this, it will change the ISO figure. Now the range of ISO depends upon the power of the lens. The lens that I'm using is quite powerful, which means that it can go as low as to 100, and the number can go as high as to 25,500. Now this is a very important number, because depending upon the power of the lens, the highest range or the highest number of the ISO is determined. A lot of lenses stop at 16,000. If the number is 25,000 in your camera, which means that your camera lens is powerful enough to capture more and more light, and it will perform better in the darker environment. So let's do this. Let's first change it to 100, and let's try to capture a photograph. Once I capture this photograph, you can see the camera is capturing a really good image of the main object here, right? And now if I change the ISO figure to 2000, 25,500, and I take the same picture, it will add a lot of grains. You can see the grains clearly here. If it is not visible in this small screen, probably I will post the bigger picture for the full screen, but there is a grains added here. And this is what happens when you change the ISO figure. Now we talked about low light photography. So for low light, what we're going to do is we are going to switch off the lights. We'll keep one switched on, and we will try to capture the photograph, the object here. Now the camera is on 25,600, which is a high ISO figure, which means that it will behave very well in low light photography, and it will be able to capture your object pretty well. But what happens is, the bigger the number of ISO is, the more grains you're going to see in your photograph. So if you click it here, you will have a lot of grains appearing in this picture. And if you change the ISO figure to a lower number, it is still capturing the photo, but the amount of grain is really low. Now I can switch off the light completely. Hey, so this happened. Now if you try to capture the photograph again, in 25,600, You can see the picture is not very clear, and there's a lot of grain here. And if you change the ISO to 100 and you capture the photograph or the object, it's going to be slightly brighter with less of the grains. And if the light is extremely low, you may want to switch to a higher ISO figure. So that's what ISO does to your photography. A higher ISO number lets you capture more light and thus capture the photograph, capture the object really well. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, if something is not answered, you can leave on the comments and I will come up with a new video for the same. But because this is a live demo, there are limitations on what all I can show live. But if you see the real pictures, you will see the effect. So have a good day, practice with ISO, play around with it, and let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.